Okay.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. Welcome to the December 4th meeting of the Monte Sereno Site and Architectural Commission. Jeannie, do you want to do roll call?
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington? Here. Commissioner Kroc?
Here.
Chairperson Wade?
Here.
To note, all four commissioners are present.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. If anybody has a cell phone, could you please turn it off? And why don't we move forward with the orders of the day?
Everything is as on the agenda.
Okay. This is the spot in the meeting where we allow public comment for anything that's not currently on the agenda. You have a 3-minute limit to come up and speak on anything outside of the current agenda. Would anybody like to come up and say anything? Take that as a no, and we'll move right on to the public hearing section.
The minutes?
Oh,
minutes.
we skipped. I'm anxious to get out of here. Let's approve the minutes from last meeting on November 6th.
So I just had a question for Jeannie on that. Should the one for Greenwood Lane that was denied, should the reasons for denial be listed on that?
These are, well, I mean, these are just action minutes, so
You just want to know what the action is. It was denied, and that's all
it was
that's important.
denied.
Okay.
So unless we're going to do that for all of them,
Because we
I
used to
would-
list it, but
yeah, because
Okay.
the audio is the
the
full
backup.
public record.
Okay. Then I motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Okay.
Just to note that that project has been appealed, so the applicant will let me know when they're ready to go to council.
Okay.
I'll second Heather's motion on relation to the minutes.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes as is, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. The minutes are okay. Now we move on to the public hearing section. The first item up on the agenda is 15821 Poppy Lane. Jeannie, can you give us a little rundown on that project?
Yeah, this is a site development permit for the demolition of an existing two-story home and construction of a new two-story home. The new home is going to be approximately 2,900 square feet. And I did note that the existing home is in excess of what currently would be required. The assumption is it's legal non-conforming, but I thought it important just to point out that the new construction is going to be in full compliance with the current regulations in place. 3,000 square feet for a two-story home in the R18, and it meets all the setbacks. There are no tree removals with this proposal, and again, I think the proposed design is very consistent with the mix of styles in that neighborhood. With that, I'm here for any questions.
Just out of curiosity, what was non-conforming in the
The square footage,
Oh,
it's about 3,200 square foot. It's 2 stories, and the current allowances are 3,000 for a two-story, 3,300 for a
Okay.
single story. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Would the owner or the owner's representative like to come up and speak on this project?
Yes, Chris Spaulding, architect, 801 Camellia Street in Berkeley. I think this is a pretty straightforward house. I'm sure you've seen the story poles. It's not any bigger than, taller than the existing house. And we always design trying to keep the neighbors in mind. And so on the second story, on the sides, we try to keep just secondary windows and high windows to minimize privacy concerns. And kind of the driving force of this house was was to increase the backyard. The existing house really sits oddly on the site, and to get a garage. There's no garage in the current house. It is the side garage, yeah.
So we're on a very narrow lot.
Yeah.
We're only built on one side of it, and then our garage, and it all faces to the left.
Right.
So the garage, you have to pull in and kind of.
Take triple turns to get in. Yeah.
Right, no.
Yeah, it's an interesting configuration.
So the owners are here if you have any questions, and if you have any questions for me.
I don't have any questions for you.
Anybody? No, it's pretty straightforward.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to come up, either owner or neighbor or anybody in addition? Okay. We'll take it back to the commission here. Comments?
Pretty
Thoughts?
simple.
Not to like, yeah.
I mean,
Turning funky into normal.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. So I don't,
Okay, I motion that we approve it as presented.
I'll set.
Okay, a second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving this current plan as is? Say
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Good luck, guys.
4-0.
You're welcome.
Good to go.
Looks nice.
Thanks. Okay. Moving on to item 2, 18792, is it Withy or
Withy.
Withy.
Withy Road.
Withy Road. Jeannie, do you want to walk us through this one?
Yeah, and I just want to note that I put in front of you correspondence from Carl and Heidi Sprick at 19010. They are also here, but you have the written correspondence from them. And so this is a project that was approved last year. It's already has a building permit, it is under construction. One of the issues that arose prior to building permit issuance was the need for the fire department to have a fire truck turnaround at the top of the hill. So in your plan set, so this is really an amendment to the site development permit. In your plan set on page A2, sheet A2, you'll see the site plan that you all saw on the previously approved site plan. It had a detached garage structure in that, I guess you'd say, southwest corner of the site. That could no longer happen to accommodate a fire truck turnaround at the top of the hill. So where you see previously approved site plan for the building department, that's what was worked out and permitted through the building permit process. So they got rid of that two-car accessory structure. Now what they're coming in to do is propose an alternate location for a detached garage. It is smaller. It's closer to the primary structure and does take out one additional, I believe it's just one additional tree. All the other trees were part of the previous approval for removal. In addition to that, because they do want a more storage area, they are looking to extend the attached garage to the rears and bring it in alignment with that rear wall of the first floor. So you can see that a little better on A3, where you have the attached two-car garage. Now they're creating a tandem space by extending that square footage. And in order to really capture that square footage, they had to push the upper floor wall in about a foot, so they wouldn't go over the overall square footage. So that you'll see on sheet A4. As a result of that, they're also realigning the retaining wall, and where the air conditioning units were outside the retaining wall, they're now placed inside the retaining wall. A6 is where you'll see how that new detached garage is going to fit on the site. It's really being built into that hill along the western property line. And really probably, 12 to 18 inches above grade, closer to that shared property line. The new detached structure meets the setback. We did find out that probably oversight on my part. The original detached garage was only 6 feet, but it does need to be 10 feet from the property line, so they are meeting the setback for that 10 accessory structure setback of 10 feet in an R1 44. And again, I think it's just that one additional, I think it's 954 oak tree that's coming out beyond what had been previously approved. All the trees going towards the north property line along that shared rear property line are still retained.
Jeannie, can you speak to what the water tank issue is?
Well, the water tanks are, those are, I suggested that they do locate them. We would look at it from a zoning standpoint as like an accessory structure because they're going to be secured to a pad. They don't meet the square footage requirements to come in through a site development permit or anything, but to show where they're going to be. This will still have the conditions from the previously approved site development permit of a pressurized water tank to be contained within a enclosed structure.
Oh, because I remember talking about
Yeah.
tanks.
And that
last time.
condition
Oh,
is still
that's
in
right,
effect.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm confused because on the previously approved site plan from the building department, it shows the water tanks. But on the previously approved site plan for us, art and architecture, it does not show.
They hadn't really located them.
Okay.
And it's not something that is, they don't need discretionary review unless they're really
Okay.
huge and go beyond that. It's not a building.
Okay.
And
Okay, I was just confused by the two different previously approved.
yeah, the previously approved site plan building department, that's when it went through building department, any other things that wouldn't, normally have to show up on a site plan necessarily because they might not have thought it through, gets put there because I have to look at it from a zoning code standpoint.
Got it.
So,
Do the water tanks fall under our purview?
not necessarily, no.
So we're just looking at the garage
Primarily,
And
yeah.
the tree.
And the tree.
and the tree. Right.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, then why do we have this letter about the tanks if we don't deal with the tanks?
Because I don't discourage anybody from voicing their concerns regardless of
So,
what.
so we can suggest a change? We're allowed to suggest a change?
It might be something that from the discussions, more information can be shared and understood and how they're going to be there and,
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Would anybody, would the owner or owner's rep like to come up and talk to this project?
Eyeballs with me.
I know the feeling.
Good evening, everybody. Gary Colsett, architect, owner's representative and agent. So let me just give a little backstory on this. Normally we would work with other cities. Part of the design review process is they run it to the fire department. Every other city that we know that we work in South County, South Bay, which uses the county fire department, and they would have probably made comments during the design review phase. Well, Monte Sereno has never done that, and they still don't do that. You guys still don't do that. And that's good and bad. Unfortunately, it was one of the bad situations. We had made an assumption, because we just finished a project, which is actually in the county, which uses a different branch of the county fire department, if you can imagine. They operate out of the county building. Still uses the same fire trucks and everything like that. But we had done a very similar project where we had planned a fire truck turnaround at the top of the hill by the home, where the road came in the bottom. Is extremely similar to this project. And we asked the fire department, it was causing some issues with our turnarounds and our fitting all of our structures at the top. And we went to the fire department and we said, do you need this here, or can we put it down at the bottom where we have a lot more room and it's flatter and everything? And they said, no, we would actually prefer to have it down at the bottom of the hill. That's where we're going to park our trucks, and we're going to come up the hill and we're going to fight the fire from this station down here. So we made the leap and integrated our project into this project and put the fire truck turnaround down below, and we went all full bore on this, right? And when we went to the building department, that's when they submitted to the fire department, and the fire department came back and said, no. This is a different reviewing agency. Said, no, we want to fight it from the top. And we had several discussions with them, and they actually said, if you want to challenge this, it's a 2-month process, and you can appeal, and they bring out the experts, and they walk the site, and all this stuff, right? Which we actually did on our other project. So we were confident that we could have done this, but it was 2 months, and they had delayed us so long. This was September, October, and we're looking at the rains coming in, and this is a hillside that we wanted to get started this year. So we said, okay, fine. So we quickly redesigned this whole thing, and what happened was we needed enough space up here that this 2-car garage was a casualty to this. And even this fire truck turnaround that they eventually approved, it's a slight modification of the true template that they want. However, they were very comfortable with it. It works as a 3-point turn. So what we did, and I think that the nomenclature on the plan that says previously approved building permit probably should have just said approved building permit site plan, to make it a little more clear for you guys, because that's what eventually we took the garage off, we redid the driveway to get the turnaround to fit. We had to expand the flat area, and everybody signed off on it, and now we're going. But what we did to do that is we took the garage off because Jeannie wasn't comfortable approving a relocation of the garage without bringing it back to the committee and the commission. I'm sorry, commissioners. Yeah.
Yep. We never know. Yeah.
Don't want to.
We can be committee.
Very loose.
Faux pas there, right?
Yeah.
No. And especially because some of the neighbors had comments about the garage. And so we had planned it to do this, and unfortunately, and then at the same time, Jeannie realized that we had, we both, our fault and an oversight, we had planned for 6 feet of setback, because in other zones you can go 6 feet, and in R144 you can't. So all those things came into play, and we ended up with a 1-car detached garage. And the owners really wanted that 4th car. So then we designed a 2-car tandem, 1 car. We modified the house. That's all been modified. It's really not anything architectural that's that big of a deal. So that's what we have here. The garage actually is in a pretty cool location because it actually creates more of a little courtyard feel. And when you drive up the driveway, that's not the first thing that we see now. As we come up to this detached garage, we just see more open space. We think that when we look back at the hearing, I forgot the neighbors' names, but the people that are directly behind us were concerned about the location of the garage. This actually will be so buried that the house, and it's lined up with the home, and so you're not seeing, the garage is not, it's inconsequential as far as anything, as far as viewing and everything like that. And at the same time, during working our building permits and stuff, we're talking to our fire sprinkler people, and we realized we needed some water tanks. Back a little bit, one other thing that we did with fire is they wanted us to put a fire hydrant on the property. Not cheap, right? The fire hydrant is too far down the street. They said, even though you're sprinkling this building, we want you to put a fire hydrant on our property. So we scrambled back with San Jose Water. There's not a lot of flow and a lot of pressure, and that's what everybody up here has to deal with. And so we knew we were going to have a pressure tank, but we weren't sure how many holding tanks we'd have to have. And so we need one for domestic, we need one for the fire sprinklers, and now that we have a fire hydrant, we were going to have 3 or 4 tanks, and now we're down to 2 tanks. It's not 100%, we haven't finalized our design, but we're thinking that we have the 2 5,000-gallon tanks. And as much as we'd like to put the pressure tank, the 50-gallon pressure booster tanks, right as close to these big tanks as possible, we realized that was a condition of approval that we were going to put it behind this retaining wall, which is on that angled wall, and that's set down lower. The reality is we've done several of these pressure tanks lately, and they are so quiet. They're like quieter than a quiet shop vac. They kind of this hum, and they're not very loud at all. They are not very pretty to look at, but if we place these right on our side of the big tanks, no one else is going to see them but us. So that's what we're actually would ask you guys to consider, allowing us to do that, only because it makes it just that much better functionally from a plumbing standpoint and a hydrology standpoint to have them as high as possible. And that's why we have our tanks situated in this location. I'll go ahead and talk about the tanks now. We have very limited options to put these tanks anywhere on the property. The hill right behind the garage and the home has the most oak trees. And sure, that would be fine if we take out 3 or 4 oak trees to put them up there. It actually probably elevates it another 2 feet, but we didn't think that was viable, considering we've already taken out another tree. So what we're very careful about placement on these tanks is that not to block the view from Carl and Heidi, yeah. So their view. So we're trying to be respectful of their view corridor. We always have tried to do that, and you can see on the site plan there's a 20-foot setback, which is a dashed line parallel with that side property, and then there's a 40-foot. So there's a second dashed line, and that's essentially what we've determined is the extent of their view corridor from their patio and part of their home. And so we've tried to keep this tank on our side of that view corridor with the best we can do to put these tanks. They have to be a certain distance apart from each other. And we have so many trees around here that we're kind of just placing them as best we can on the site. So that's the deal with the tanks, the 5,000-gallon tanks, the holding tanks, and then the pressure tanks. Much as we prefer to have them up there, if it's deemed that we have to drop them down behind the retaining wall, we're prepared to do that. And we just wanted to bring that up and request that option, because we wasn't clear where we're showing these. What it is like a 50-gallon drum, and it's got a pump on it. So they probably stand about this tall. They're usually blue. They're not very pretty.
Pressure tank.
The pressure tanks, yeah. Steve, you may have seen them before.
Right here, right?
No,
That's the water tank.
Yeah, those are the water tanks. And we have a cut sheet of the water tank, and they're dark green. They basically blend into the environment, We can screen them a little bit. We're going to want to try to plant them out from our view, but, we can try to screen the whole back property line. That's the whole plan anyway, is to provide a solid evergreen hedge between the properties. It doesn't grow too tall, it doesn't block anybody's view, but it just kind of is like a green fence.
So these tanks, they're on a slope, so they're going to be cut into the slope a little bit.
Correct. They'll be on a concrete pad with piers. They'll be anchored.
So the tank's 8 feet tall, but in reality, it's only going to stick up, I don't know, maybe 4 foot above the ground by the time you cut in, right?
That's right. 4 to 5 feet. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to be sticking up 8 feet because it's got to be cut into the slope. There's going to be presumably a little retaining wall around that pad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So they will be kind of.
They will be nestled in as best as we can. We still have to respect the trees around them and
Right.
the roots.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't have any more questions.
Garrett, we're only cutting out one tree, one additional tree. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And then on the approval that we gave, and I have some vague recollection of this, there was, and your note reflects as much, saying that every effort should be taken to preserve certain additional trees that were going to be near the original location of the proposed attached garage. Do we know if any of those were capable of being preserved?
We do know. And the answer is no, they're not.
Okay.
We got approval to take them out, but we sometimes we argue with the arborists. They say, "Oh, this is going to die," and we've worked around trees that were supposed to come out, and we've left them in, and they're still living. So we would just try to take the shot at it, even though we're still on the hook for replacement trees, et cetera. So with this broadened driveway turnaround for the fire trucks, they were just a casualty. There's no way they're going to survive.
Understood. Just
Yeah,
wanna clear that up.
unfortunate. But we have the opportunity now, since the oak trees aren't there, we can put pittosporum or something like that as an evergreen, low maintenance, deer tolerant planting along there to try to create even a better buffer between the neighbors.
Okay.
And I think it's more of a win-win in the long run. These plants are not going to grow very tall, whereas the trees are going to continue to grow and could potentially block their view of the valley, which is a tremendous view. It's beautiful.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
We good?
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Appreciate it. Would anybody else like to come up and say anything?
I'll give him mine.
I have one here.
Yeah, you can. Okay. Yes, my name is Carl Sprick. I'm the neighbor just up the hill and off to the side of this property. And yes, our concern is the two humongous pressure tanks. We looked at the drawings that Jeannie was kind enough to give us a copy of, and as far as we can tell, standing on our garden and so forth, these are humongous things in your face. Two of them standing right there, kind of interfering with the whole view of the valley, possibly then the value of our property too. And I just was looking at the drawing and wondering if the left-hand tank, left hand as seen from our viewpoint, if that could be lowered by 4 feet, that would be of tremendous help. We think that these are humongous, industrial-looking, ugly things. And I even we went down there and we tried to estimate from the drawings just about where this left-hand tank would be. And it looks like, and I made a picture of it here, if I can leave with you.
We could pass it around.
Sure.
And here,
It was like the 1960s.
so on the left, I do not know if we got exactly the right location, but we think we did. And on the left side, you can see a pole with 8 feet high, showing the height of one of these tanks, and the left side would be the one that would begin to interfere with our view. And this is our major concern. if something could be done either to lower that tank by a few feet, or it looks like from the drawing you could even move that tank around in line with the other tank so that it would be out of our sight. It would clear that site a little bit. And so we would like to request that this be considered. And I think that is, we never could find where the pressure pump and pressure tank is going to be, but I think the architect did tell us this evening that it would be somewhere close to one of these tanks and that it would be covered. I have all of this in my letter. So I just want to emphasize again that we're very disturbed by having this tank, the left-hand tank, in our view, and if it could be lowered or relocated, swung around in some fashion so that it is not in the line of view where it is now, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So in your photo, this large tree here, is that the stone pine?
That is the stone pine.
Okay,
yes.
so you're on their property pretty
We're
much.
standing right here.
Can you show us on here kind of where
we are standing where the manhole cover is. On our property there.
Oh, right here?
No, right there. MH.
Right here, the sump? Oh,
Yes,
wait, right here.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's all our garden area here.
Okay.
And then the house to be built would be
Yeah, I understand.
to the side. And we estimate this one tank would be something like that.
Do you want to see that again in reference to the
I would.
stone pine and the manhole cover?
Where is the manhole cover?
It's right on-
SSMH, a little circle.
Right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you see the height of that pole, that's 8 feet. With the red ribbon on it. And that would be the outer edge of that left-hand tank. These are humongous beasts, these things.
Anybody else have a question? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Helpful.
Gary, did you want to see this picture?
Want to see this picture, Gary? Yeah.
I'll school myself on that thing, so. I'll figure it out.
I'm sure Gary has some responses, and I'd like to hear.
Yeah,
from him.
I'd
But
like
is
to
there any-
ask him a
does
few
anybody else have
questions.
comments?
Other people to
Yeah,
speak
okay.
first.
Yeah, I'll let Gary come back up afterwards. Would anybody else like to come up and speak?
Good evening. I'm Apo Sezginer. I live in 19020. It's the house to the west of this property, just up the hill. And between the two properties, there has been a very nice tree and vegetation cover. And I would like to correct one thing about the representation. We do not have a view of the valley in that direction. We see the trees. And that's how we like it. And I'm concerned about loss of one more tree. The barrier has been eroded significantly. It's not going to serve either property very well. We'll be looking at each other. The houses are very close. So I would request if that tree that's going to be lost can be replaced, just keep the barrier. A low hedge quite doesn't do it. It can keep the same height. Is that possible? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Would anybody else like to come up and speak? Okay. I'm going to ask Gary, give Gary a chance to kind of come up and comment on these.
So let me address the first or the second option first. If you see the space that we have between the proposed detached garage and our property line is 10 feet, we can plant at least one or two oak trees there to replenish the old trees. We can do a sizable tree, maybe a 36-inch box, one 36-inch or two 24s here to get them going. and that will replace that. We still feel that we wanted a little bit of a lower screen, but if there's going to be a fence or something, that might be all that the Kelmansons need. So
Yeah, and I would just make sure that there is an 11-inch oak there and that stone pine, so whatever
Yeah.
you put in between, you don't overdo it so that
Kill one.
well, that's the
one 36-inch box might be,
But-
Are you talking behind the garage?
behind the garage. Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the uphill side, and so that'll
Back.
get some height anyway. That's the trick, that the art about planting new trees on existing properties. You see, sometimes we have to plant trees, and you stuff them in there, and
They don't look good.
you know, these when you have nice trees and you have bad trees next to them, you take them out. The nice trees got a hole in it, you know, because it had to grow on the bad tree. It takes several years, if it ever can come back. And so we don't want to create that situation again. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll have to do it as best we can on that tree, and we have a great landscape architect with great knowledge of this. So
minimum one tree, and as
Okay.
large as you
okay,
can,
I think that
so that it, has that initial height.
okay.
Okay, so we're talking one new tree behind the proposed garage
Correct.
location in that 10-foot chunk there. Okay.
And if we can get anything else, we have a very limited space where we have the backup, the fire truck turn around, push us way back into the property. So we have very limited earth to plant between the retaining wall and the property line. There's just, you can maybe get a hedge there.
I think that's just going to be more of a hedge.
It would almost be like, we would be better off if we could plant a tree on your property, instead of our property, because there's no room on our property. So that's something maybe we can talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they're game for that, that would.
Okay. And to talk to Carl and Heidi's request, it's funny because the manhole cover was not part of what we had assumed as part of their overall garden view. We're trying to be respectful and not walk onto their property, so we're just kind of looking over and then turning around and saying, okay, this is the view. As Mr. Wade said, that this will be lowered down, and I wanted to explain the tank at the very highest point in the center is 8 feet. But if you see the picture on the cut sheet, it's got like a cone on it, and then it curves down. So I don't know exactly what the height of the outer edge is, but it's definitely less than 8 feet. It's probably, I would estimate, 6.5 feet. And so we're sinking it down 2 feet. So now it's four and a half feet, something like that, maybe 5 feet at the most. So, and if we could swing it around a little bit, if we can kind of maneuver it in the site, we're all for that. And I think that they know my clients want to be good neighbors, and they want to keep that view corridor open. We're not doing perimeter fencing or anything like that, so there's going to be this open boundaries. And they certainly, if we have the ability to move these tanks even up higher and out of the way more, we will. Yeah, that's our preference. The
And the only-
farther up the hill, the better.
And the only thing I would caution that if you do swing it down, you have tree 965, which is a
5-inch.
5-inch diameter oak, which if it translates to less than a 20-inch
It's less than 22, yeah.
then it's not a protected tree.
Right, right.
So,
It's already being.
It's already
mixed in.
being taken out.
Yeah.
That's why.
oh,
Yeah,
965,
that's right.
okay.
Yeah, so
That's right.
just looking
Got
at
me.
this, it seems like it could be easily swung almost more parallel with that wing wall, the retaining wall
Northeast, yeah.
to the
It,
right.
it lowers the elevation a little bit. That's the thing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if the top corner stays at the elevation you want it, and the thing swings.
Oh, yeah, I see that. I get, because the contours are wrapping around.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it won't change the elevation of the tank.
We just have to maintain that 2 or 30-inch clearance. So that's what, it
Right.
swings it around a little bit, but we're talking a couple inches probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, if we can rotate them around, we'd be absolutely would want to do that.
Okay.
Sure.
I just have a question. I'm not familiar with the water tank. I'm a city girl. The water tank thing. So there's 2 of these and 2 pressurized tanks?
We're going to have at least 1 pressurized tank. We might have a second one to pressurize we might have a second one to get the water up to the tanks, and then 1 from the tanks to the house. There's very low pressure. It's
How
like
big are
it's
those?
less than 20 pounds per square inch, where normally at your house it's probably 60.
I remember when we approved this, the neighbors were concerned about water
Yeah, they
pressure.
were
Its
saying-
water pressure is very low, very low. I've done several homes where we had to do these tanks. Generally, on a house of this size, with fire sprinklers, domestic use, we're using 2 at a very minimum, and usually 3. So we're trying to get this to 2 because we have a fire hydrant. Okay. So sometimes we'll hook up 1 or 2 tanks to what's called a wharf hydrant, which is a private hydrant that's just there to the trucks pump from that. So 10,000 gallons is going to go fast in a fire. It's going to go fast. So I don't know if their home is sprinklered. I doubt it because of the age of the home, but there's just new requirements and so it may seem like a lot, but it's not. It's not.
The pressure tanks are going to go in between the holding tanks and the house, roughly somewhere
Correct.
in there.
That's right.
So those will be
Okay.
totally covered, or those will not be anybody.
You won't.
Be
You won't.
obscured by the other
Yeah, we'll build fences around them and stuff like that. So, and what we can do is before we finally locate them, we could invite them up to another property that we have these tanks installed, and they come up and look at them and listen to them and all that. So, yeah. I just would rather not dig them down too far because I want to.
Need the pressure.
There's a lot of other trees around there, so as soon as you start digging too deep, you get into their roots.
Okay, I'm just trying to formulate what we're
Okay.
going to say this. I think, the new tree behind the garage, that's pretty straightforward. And then the other, I think, requirement is that the tank pad for the holding tanks is going to be swung to minimize objectionable views for the neighbor.
But I feel like Gary has done everything possible to accommodate everybody's views, and he's been asked to do a lot of really difficult things from the fire department, and he's also providing tanks that could be used to fight fires for the neighbors as well. I feel like he's going to do a good job on whatever that decision is. So do we really want to require, I feel like we don't have the ability, and Jeannie's kind of directed us on those tanks, that really it's not our purview to begin with, that we shouldn't require that as part of our,
Okay.
you have any?
Yeah, and are we back before us?
Yeah, I think we are.
Well, then, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as submitted with the following.
Okay, hang on. You're welcome to come back up, sure.
This is based on something that Gary just mentioned about possibly planting a tree on the border of their property. It matters not to us if there's a tree planted there, but I do have to point out that we have an easement for our water line right at that property line. So one would have to be careful.
Absolutely, we're very cognizant of
You know, we don't know exactly where this runs, whether it's on the line, property line, or a few feet up. We don't know.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. We're being very careful. Yeah. So anything we plant is going to be beyond that. I'll talk to Dan and Shannon about that. They're planting a tree. You don't want anything planted, right? You don't want to preserve that.
Sorry. No. I'm very comfortable with these guys working it out.
Right, right. Without putting
Because
conditions
I know
on it.
Gary, and I know he's going to do the right thing to make everybody, happy here. And I'm kind of with you in terms of chaining or restraining his options by us, saying you need to put a tree here and you need to swing that 20 degrees or whatever. I don't think we want to do
And
that.
it
don't
sounds like
think we
we're
wanna do
not,
that.
we actually can't do that, but this was a good forum to come up with that solution.
Yeah.
So I think it was
Okay.
constructive.
But I would like our approval to be conditioned on the instruction that they work with the neighbors to address the following concerns, namely moving the tanks in a more northerly direction, planting at least one 36-inch box tree on the southwest edge of the newly identified detached garage location, and to the extent it's appropriate to do so, consideration of planting of another tree on the neighbor's lot, so long as it doesn't interfere with any water lines and easements associated therewith.
I would
Sounds like that's the motion.
Mic drop.
I would caution against requiring planting something on an adjacent property.
Yeah, I don't
Not
think you have
requiring
the
it,
right.
the instruction is that they work with the
Yeah.
neighbors, if that
I
can be
think-
done, great.
Yeah, I think the discussion here at the hearing,
Okay.
puts the representative on notice that he's voluntarily made some statements that would lead us to believe they're going to work together on a mutually acceptable solution, whatever that may be.
I second it.
In addition to that, the tree that you can require on the property between the
Right.
side property line
Okay.
and the.
So maybe Steve, we just require the one tree and
Work
leave
it
the
out.
other things a little bit more open-ended.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't want to go outside
Purview.
our purview.
Okay, so do you want to tidy that
Oh,
up for us?
please, I know you're going to do
Yeah,
that.
'cause you did such a good job the first time.
Okay.
Go for it.
Approve as submitted with the expectation that the applicant will work to move the water tanks in a northerly direction and such they don't interfere with the view corridor of the neighbors, and to plant one 36-inch box tree on the, I believe, southwest border of the newly identified location for the detached garage that we're approving.
Or behind the new garage.
Or behind the garage, yes. That would be my motion.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 4-0. This amendment is revision to the previously approved plan is accepted with these requirements.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Gary, for working with these folks, and guys, thanks for working with Gary. Okay, thank you.
I wish all of our applicants were like Gary.
I do too.
Remember,
And the designs look good.
yeah. Why am I doing that?
I have,
Oh, we're good. This meeting is adjourned. There it is.
Is it?
I put in front of you all the next year's schedule.
Okay.
We only have one thing that'll be on the January 8th. Only one thing was filed. And it's an amendment to an already approved project. But again, I wasn't going to
Yeah.
take the liberty to approve it myself, so.
What about the one on off Dave's there?
Yeah, what,
That's,
what's happening there?
the applicant has graciously agreed to keep bumping it to accommodate the neighbor who
So
it's
they're
not going to
gonna,
be. So it's going to
So
be, I
we
think,
haven't seen-
January 7th.
Which one is
January,
that's the one where
Variance.
the
Oh,
the
to go to the
home
city.
had a
City Council.
variance, a one-story and a two-story variance, kind of overlooking the neighbor below.
yeah, you missed that one
The
too.
Adobe.
Yeah, it's in the minutes.
You missed
It's
like a
this one.
doozy of a meeting.
It's a complicated one.
It was
Yeah.
really complicated. We didn't know what we were doing.